So this is our module that will apply both to my private students as well as to my ODU students concerning consonants and the beginning of our exploration of those consonants. You'll have a handout that will serve as the backup material, which we will share on my screen as we're taking a look together at what consonants are. Consonants versus vowels. These are generally the sounds formed with all of the letters that are not A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y. Consonants are phonemes formed when breath or phonation, so that's either air or voice, are interrupted either completely or partially by your articulators. Consonants fall into different categories. We have things called plosives, fricatives, epiglottal fricatives, affricate phonemes, and nasal consonants. So today's work, we're going to focus on sounds called plosives. And plosives are consonant phonemes that are formed when breath or phonation, again, just air or voice, are trapped behind closed articulators until air pressure builds up and is released, creating the phoneme. So when you think of the word plosive, what does it sound like? It resembles the word explosive, and this is not an accident. So if you just close your lips and have everything else open in your mouth, a la the number 5 less ec vowel, ah, ah. And if you do close the jaw slightly and bring the lips together, right? And you start to say that ah inside your mouth. Don't let it come through your nose. Right? It needs to come out somewhere. And so if you let the lips part as the pressure builds to its maximum and it needs to come out, and you keep vocalizing after those lips part, ba, 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 you get our first plosive phoneme, b, b, right? And this is voiced air coming up through the airway into the resonating cavity of the mouth. The soft palate is closed. No air is coming through your nose, right? B. The lips are brought lightly together, and then pressure builds up behind them. The lips open, and it's released, and we get b, b, b. Now, as you recall, when we talked about neutral consonants, we talked about the idea of, well, why go create a whole new sound when we can take a sound that we have and alter it slightly and create a whole different sound using the same shape. So if we do the same thing we just did for B, but we just do it with air, right? Close the lips, let it build up, and then open the lips. No voice. We get the P phoneme. So what we have is we have the same mouth shape being used to create both P and B. P is voiceless. P, p, p. If I don't use my voice, you still know that that's a P. If I don't use my voice and try to make a B, p, 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 it's still P. So with voice, we get B, 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 B. And that makes these two sounds have a very special relationship. And that relationship is referred to as a cognate relationship. These two sounds are cognates of one another. And a cognate these are pairs of consonant phonemes, right here, formed with the same mouth shape where one is voiced and the other is voiceless. So P and B are cognates. B, p, b. Now, if you'll note, I can't sustain either one of these. A vowel, I can sustain. Ah, ooh, e, y buzz, all of those. I can sustain vowels. But this particular consonant, I can't sustain. And some consonants you can sustain, but not plosives. Plosives cannot be sustained. They burst out in a single sound. Now, that's in the front of the mouth. If you go to the middle of the mouth and you use the tip of your tongue against your gum ridge to trap the sound, and we let pressure build up behind that. So what happens is the tip of the tongue is against the gum ridge, all right, or the back of the front teeth up at the gum ridge. The sides of your tongue form a seal along your teeth, along your molars on the top of your mouth, so no air can get around your tongue. It's all trapped inside the cup of your tongue, and your soft palate is closed. This is as though you were making the letter N. Try that. Start by making the N phoneme. We haven't gotten to nasal consonants yet, but let's start there. N. Tickles. Whew. Love that. So, the tip of the tongue is at the gum ridge or the back of the top teeth. The sides of the tongue are making this cup along the top of the molars. No air gets out. If we close the soft palate, that pressure builds up there inside the cup of the tongue. Let me out, it's saying. So you drop the tip of the tongue and you end up with a new plosive phoneme because it's going to explode out of the tip of the tongue, and we get d, 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 or d, d. Now, if we do as we did with the B and take the voice away and just let that be air, t, 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 we get T. And so T and D are cognates. T, t, being unvoiced, and D being voiced. That's the middle of the mouth right behind the front teeth. You can also, if you, and it's interesting that these correspond to the nasal consonants. So if you think of M, close the soft palate, you get B or P. If you think of N, close the soft palate, you get D, 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 or T, unvoiced, T, 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 right? The other nasal consonant is NG, and we'll come to these next week. But NG, as in ring and sing and tingle and think. That NG sound is formed when the back of the tongue makes contact with the roof of the mouth at, and let's be more specific here, because we never say roof of the mouth, remember. We say, because we learned this map of articulators, where the soft palate and the hard palate meet. If we close off the soft palate and let it release at that point on the tongue, g, 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 we get a G phoneme. G, g, g. If it's just air, what do you get? K, k, k. You get K. So K and G are cognates. K being unvoiced, k, 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 and G being voiced, g, 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 g. All right? So here you have it. Plosives are consonant phonemes formed when breath or phonation is fully trapped behind closed articulators. Pressure builds up and is released, creating the phoneme. Trapped and released cannot be sustained. And these are your primary English plosive phonemes. All right? And a good way to remember this is with a mnemonic device, which is a phrase that we would use to remember them. We could remember this by saying, pigs get kicked down tiny blocks, and suddenly you will know them all. Pigs get kicked down tiny blocks. And here you have an explanation of everything I just talked about. The P phoneme coming when the lips come together, and this is related, of course, as we said, to, you can find this proper placement by using the M nasal consonant as a reference, here the N nasal consonant as a reference, and here NG, the nasal consonant ing. Let me make that a little clearer, as the reference. All right. Please note that to form all plosives, the soft palate must be closed. We don't want it leaking out through the nose, because if it happens, let's talk about this. We talked about medial nasality as a concept. Toot, toot, toot. If you pinch your nose while saying that word, toot, 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 there's no buzzing in the nose because no air is coming up into the sinuses. But occasionally, when you have a nasal consonant at the end of the word, such as T-U-N-E, air will come into the sinuses. It has to on the nasal consonant N, but we'll anticipate that and open the soft palate early, and we will get nasality on the O-O. And you'll feel that vibration in the nose on the oo. Not supposed to happen. Okay if it does, but that's what we call medial nasality. It's happening as an anticipation of a nasal consonant at the end of the word. But what happens if people have chronic nasality? You know, if their soft palate is always open, if there's always air coming through the nose when they speak, well, then it's very difficult to get pressure to build up behind these plosive consonants. So instead of t, you end up with and because the pressure can't build up. A chronic nasality, it undermines vocal energy by taking away the pressure necessary to create crisp plosives. All right? So if you're finding that there is air leaking through your nose when you're trying to make these plosives, pigs, get, kicked, down, tiny blocks. If there's air coming through your nose, you'll have trouble making these with much force or clarity. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's talk about a good exercise we can do with plosives. If you start by saying ba, good, ba, ta, ga, ta, bata-gata. And you do this on a count. And you say that 7 times, and on the 8th count, you say but. Like this. I'll give you 4 for free. 1, 2, ready, and. Bata-gata, 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 but. That was 8. I should count it out for you. Bata-gata, 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 but. That's a great way to practice rolling from one plosive to another. We can speed it up a little bit. 1, 2, ready, and. Bata-gata, 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 but. You can go a little faster. 1, 2, ready, and. Bata-gata, 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 but. You can go even a little faster. 1, 2, ready, and. Bata-gata, 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 but. But something happens somewhere right around that point. We stop really trapping and releasing that air. It's no longer bata-gata. We start to tap the sounds. And that tapping is wonderful. It is key. Because as you heard on my microphone here, as I was making p and k and t, p, you hear that popping on the microphone. That's what that's called. I think we've mentioned that before in the past. Popping is when a puff of air hits this metal diaphragm in the microphone and creates a square wave. It's a little thump, and you can't use it because it's not clear. It's a microphone artifact, and it's a result of this puffing of air out of your mouth. And they make a pop screen, which is a mesh screen that fits in between your mouth and the microphone to prevent this from happening. A pop screen covers the microphone. It's a little mesh screen that is in between your mouth and the microphone, and it catches some of these puffs of air. But one of the ways you can fix that also is by not exploding the air out of your mouth, by trapping and releasing it violently, but thinking instead of moving your tongue and your speech mechanism vertically and lightly, like you're tap dancing. It's very crisp if you listen to that. You can hear each of those sounds, right? And as a result, if you have to speak quickly in a voiceover or in any situation. The idea is you use only the amount of pressure required to create the phoneme, right? And you think light and vertical in its creation. You think about just tapping these sounds, right? Rather than exploding them out of your mouth. Because that slows us down. That amount of pressure and vocal energy requires us to slow that speech down in the instances where we want to speak quickly but cleanly and accurately. So this is one of the best examples of something you can apply that will improve your articulation and intelligibility overall while speaking. All right, so we've got badagaras. We can do it with other sets of these phonemes. We can do it with katapata, K-T-P-T. Katapata, 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 cut. In this sense, let's do it together. 1, 2, ready, and katapata, 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 cut. Good, a little bit faster. 1, 2, ready, and katapata, 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 cut. Feel that lightness happening. Faster. 1, 2, ready, and katapata, 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 cut. Right? Katapata, dagabada. Really good exercises. And now I'm going to throw a wrench in it. Try dagabada. So we're going to go dagabada, dagabada, and end on dug. Nice and slow. 1, 2, ready, and dagabada, 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 dug. It's harder. It's harder because you're repeating one sound twice. Dagabada, da. So the D is being repeated. And also, this happens as a pattern in the mouth that is different than the other two patterns. When you think of the other two patterns, b is in the front of the mouth, ta is in the middle, ga is in the back. Ta, middle, ba, front. So it's ba, ta, ga, ta, front, middle, back, middle, front, middle, back. It's sort of this rolling motion in the mouth, right? When you think of katapata, it's the reverse. It's back, middle, front, middle, back, middle, front. Katapata, katapata. Dagabada is middle, back, front, middle, middle, back, front, middle, middle, back, front. And those first two patterns, front, middle, back, middle, back, and back, middle, front, that rolling motion is very common in the way consonant phonemes are presented in English. They are adjacent to one another, and they usually conform to these patterns of being adjacent relatively most of the time in the mouth. We very, very rarely have a back-front consonant combination. So that may be why that's a little more difficult. Could be. Let's try it, though. Dagabada. 1, 2, ready, and dagabada, 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 dug. A little faster. 1, 2, ready, and dagabada, 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 dug. Once more, faster. 1, 2, ready, and dagabada, 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 dug. So you can work on these on your own time. It's a great way to prepare for tongue twisters, which we will do next week. Now, you can combine all of these. You can combine all three of these into a single exercise. Karapada bada gada dagabada. 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 You can play with these, but the idea is to find your weak spot and lubricate it. To use these exercises over and over again, to find the trouble spots and work them and work them and work them and work them until you create new kinesthetic memory. Until you create a new flexibility in your speech surrounding the patterns that currently are somewhat difficult for you. All right. So now let's talk about one of the other ways we can use plosives to make speech clearer. If I showed you a sentence, and I shall show you a sentence here, give me just a moment, or a two-word phrase, let's say. The phrase bad, the word bad. Hang on. There we go. Bad. Right? Bad omen. If I asked you to say that phrase, if you were trying to be difficult, you'd say bad omen. and you'd hit that plosive, right? But that's not how we actually say it. When we say this word, this phrase, this pair of words, we say bad omen. And we tap that D and let it carry into this vowel, bad omen. It's almost as if we're saying ba, domen, bad omen, bad omen, bad omen, right? This theft, kind of the ending consonant, an attachment to the following vowel, we call this a consonant vowel bridge, because we have a consonant bridging into a vowel. A consonant vowel bridge, CV bridge. All right? And you'll find that also in the handout that I have sent to you. And we'll talk mainly in terms of the consonant vowel bridge, but we have two other bridges we'll discuss more in depth on Wednesday. But as you see here, we essentially remove the consonant phoneme that ends the first word and attach it to the vowel in the second. So instead of saying big orange, we say big orange. Instead of bad omen, we say bad domen. And that is a consonant vowel bridge. The other two is, of course, if we have the same phoneme between the words that and tomato. We don't say that tomato. We don't over-articulate that tomato. We don't double tap the T. Or bad dog. Or bad time. We just link them. That tomato. They share the T. Or bad dog. They share the D. And in the case of bad time down here, Keith, those aren't the same sound. No, they're not. But how is D and T? How are D and T related? One is voiced, the other is unvoiced. They're made at the same place in the mouth. They are called cognates. And that makes this a special kind of bridge, a cognate bridge. And that's when one word ends in a consonant phoneme and the following word begins in its cognate. So the vocal energy is either stopped or initiated while maintaining the structural action. So if I'm saying a bad time, what I would do is I would push that vocal energy into the T and then cut it off. Bad, and you can hear me stop vocalizing. Bad time. You could hear the vocalization stop as I'm maintaining that structure for the D and T. Bad time. I don't break it. I don't make them two separate sounds. I keep them in one place and just turn the voice on or off while it's there. And those are cognate bridges. All right? So plosive consonants explode out of the mouth. We keep them light and we tap them to create vocal agility or speech agility, especially when we want to speak quickly. We think light and using just as much pressure as we need to create the phoneme. If a plosive consonant occurs before a vowel in the next word, we can link those. It actually applies to other consonants as well, but for now, let's talk about plosives, all right? So a word ends in D, the next word begins in A, bad apple. We can link those, bad apple, right? And that helps that D to be heard. And when these plosive consonants are heard, when they are crisp, then we achieve greater intelligibility in our speech and greater articulation. There's one other place that there's another part of the review. Cognates are two speech sounds that are formed the same way in the mouth, but one is voiced and the other is not. So voiced and unvoiced. Cognates. The one other place that plosives will appear is at the ends of words. All right. So let's say at the end of a sentence, nothing comes after it. There's no vowel that follows. There's no sound you can link to. This is my bat. This is my bat. Is it my bad or is it my bat? That little t or d, that little release of that consonant is something we call an off glide. An off glide happens on a plosive, in this case, when our tongue is done making the sound and it returns to its neutral position, right? So I could say bad and not release the D. That's bad and I never release that D. But how much clearer is that word if I do bad, that little as my tongue drops back down to the bottom of my mouth is an off glide. And plosives are what we call off glide consonants because they lend themselves to this very nicely, and it improves their articulation when we do. So bad, bat. This place is a bag. I don't know why it's a bag. That's what came out. I need a bag. Releasing those sounds at the ends of sentences or before pauses helps those words to be understood more clearly. And in particular, this applies to when those words end in plosives. And that is an off glide. And all of that, once again, is here. By using an off glide, you are continuing the vocal energy of the D, in this case, at the end of the words, sentence bad. His swing is bad. Into the off glide so that we hear the D instead of a T. His swing is bad. Now, it's also not uncommon that some people will D-voice ending consonants. His swing is bad. Is it bat? Is it bat or bad? So make sure that you're using the cognate that is in the word. Bad, bat. Right? Don't devoice an ending consonant that should be voiced, because it becomes a different word when you do. It becomes a different word when you do. And the only thing that saves you is context. It's the only way anybody would know what you intend to say is with context. And sometimes context is not clear. So by using off glide and making sure we're using the proper cognate for the sound that is in the word, and we'll talk about how to do that later, you ensure greater intelligibility. That is the video to cover today's lesson. I hope you enjoy it. At least you watch it, you learn, and I will see you on Wednesday for Tongue Twisters.